We're good.
Good. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's version of Live with Lussetto. We have no Dan Christensen yet. We're having some technical difficulties there, but we've got Jazz as usual. And this week's guest is the world famous Brian Fuhr. Welcome, Brian.
World famous.
Well, some infamous. Is that better?
Pretty much.
Okay. Brian, you're not a normal outlaw, but not a Heartland puller. You have pulled with us a couple times. You might just kind of tell everybody what you pull, and we'll go from there.
Oh, we have a light limited mod. We have a 572 cubic inch. It's actually a Rhino block, but it's MBR heads with a couple new additions coming on this summer. We're kind of excited about, and I don't know. I guess you asked me on here to kind of talk about a lot of how the class got started, and also the history that I kind of got to grow up on. I was really fortunate to grow up with a great group of people, and pretty much the only ones that I grew up with that are still pulling in my age range is Chris Mites. You know, him and I we were friends ever since we could walk, you know.
So we'll kind of hit the way back here, and that's what's crazy too, is you and I have similar stories, and yet our paths really never crossed when we were really young. You might start with kind of the groups, because you mentioned the other day that there was a group that you said that your dad pulled with that I didn't even know existed. Something about Midwest Modified Pullers, or what was that?
Yep. The Midwest Modifieds. They were together. I think it was kind of Iowa and eastern Nebraska, and it kind of dissolved, I think, in the 70s. And there for a couple of years, Dad and Grandpa and Uncle, they pulled with the NTPA for a few years before the Nebraska Bush Pullers got started.
Okay. Did you guys ever pull with the Nebraska State group?
I believe so. We pulled them a couple times here and there. I mean, I pulled with them out in Arnold, Nebraska.
Oh, really? Okay. Because, see, I remember, and I was a little kid. I somewhat remember, but maybe late 70s, there was still a mod class in the Nebraska State group with Lowell Hale from Meadow Grove, Vernon Rohde from Sumner, or up in that, or Miller maybe. Did you guys ever cross paths with those mods?
I wouldn't know there. Don't go that far back. Okay.
Because there was a pretty strong mod class that was part of that NTPA group, but I think there might have been a little gap in between. I just, it surprised me with that Midwest. Do you know much about that group, or you said it was Western Iowa? And
it kind of what Dad said. I think that I think that a lot of the guys from out here were part of it. The Delaney's and Spichkas, and everybody seemed like they had a mod back then. I know a lot of nicknames, Gonzo, and they all. The rules at that time were basically 500 cubic inch naturally aspirated.
Okay.
And everybody was running an automatic transmission, and I know that my family was one of the first ones to have a crawler clutch, and the other guys had like a Lenko box behind, and they thought that was some pretty cool stuff, back in the day.
What about like Lee Brosh and Mark Cotman? Those guys, I know Otto Reimers was another one up in West Point area, I think.
Yep, they were all part of that too, and they moved on to kind of bigger and better things.
Yep.
But yeah, and there was a lot of them around here, and it's
Then what year did you guys start pulling Nebraska Bush?
1981.
Was that the inception of Bush?
Yes. Or was it I might have started in 1980. They might not have had the mods in 1980, but it was either the first or second year in Nebraska Bush. I think that I think that Irv Hake was the one that had the longest membership
With Nebraska Bush?
He was the one of the first year. And I think Dad came on the second year.
Okay. The first I ever heard of Nebraska Bush is they used to pull at the state fair with the
talking about the state fair. I was thinking about stuff to talk about tonight, and the Lincoln, when the state fair was in Lincoln, man, that was something. It was kind of your last fling before school started when I was a kid, and that was awesome. We had 3 days, and our parents basically all just had a ball, and all of us kids were unsupervised and running around, and I got a couple of stories I can't tell, but like Chris Mites and I remember we were driving around on Doman's Gator back in the day, and it was probably 2:00 in the morning because everyone just got in the middle of the pits and just had a big party. And we ran into one of those drainage tile things and like messed the front up of that Gator. And we thought we were just totally going to get in trouble for the deal. And we came back, and Domans were like, we would have done it anyway. So
at least you didn't put it in the lake.
Yeah. I think the lake was dried up by that time.
Oh, serious. Now, talking about the state fair then, what did Mainz have the cock shut at that time?
I think they had the super cock at that time.
Yeah, you said it, not me. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know when they ended up with that tractor?
I wouldn't. I
remember, Dad pulled. See, it's kind of the funny story with Bush. My dad actually had, I wouldn't say had the opportunity. He was going to try to pull in that because did they pull the day before the national pull?
I believe that was right. And they kind of mixed things up because it was a neat deal because you had a bunch of multiple sleds there and organizations, and everybody just got together, and it was kind of like what Illinois treats their state fair like. Everybody pulled at the state fair, and it was a really neat deal. You had the national guys there, and then you had the state level guys there, and it was. It was cool. It was cool back then.
Vaguely, what I remember is that they pulled like the state groups, maybe one day, and then the next 2 days were Grand National NTPA.
Yeah.
Because my dad actually, he was going to take when he still had the M on gas, which that tractor sold after the 81 season. So that, that thing actually was legal except for the tire size to pull in the Bush class.
Yeah.
And one of their members, after the second call, they just said, we just prefer you didn't come.
Yeah.
That left a little saddle sore for a long time. But that's crazy to think back. That was 1980, and you probably weren't even born then yet, were you?
No, I wasn't. My state fair things, like the guy that had the heavy metal tractor, that was neat seeing him come out there.
Ray Idle.
Ray, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you're talking late 90s, early 2000s then. Yeah.
But you got to think though. That complete bowl of the racetrack. The outside of it was completely full, and then you went back to those little horse sheds, and that was completely full of tractors all the way around. And when you lined up to go pulling, you were lined up completely around the racetrack. It was amazing.
Oh, it was. And just to add a little bit to that, in those, it switched to outlaw somewhere, I think, in 96. But previous to that, when it was in TPA, I was a little kid watching, everything from the Connors brothers to Engler. And it was the biggest of the big. I got to watch the general, pull. It was so cool, and
And it seems like you go to a state fair poll nowadays, you can't go in the gate until 2:10 p.m. and you got to be out of there 45 minutes after you pull. And, there's no fun really anymore like what we had when we were kids.
The year that I specifically remember, the 96 year we were down at the state fair, they announced the crowd at 9,100 people. And that's crazy to think about, because that's something early on when you and I were working on the state fair in Grand Island, it potentially within 75 to 100 miles was the fourth largest pull at that time. Ravenna was bigger, and Gibbon was bigger. It's kind of crazy to think about. That's crazy to see where it's went. I wish we could get it back to the old days, but it's going to be pretty tough.
Oh, I think everything will be. I'll never forget the first time I ever hooked a Bauer sled was at the state fair, and Kyle Petch came up to me and he goes, "You're going to feel like there's nothing behind you till about 270 feet, but don't let off of it.
It's okay. It's coming." Yep. That was, see, the first year, and I think 99 or 98 was the first year I think they had a Bauer sled.
I think it was a blue one. It was either blue or orange, if I remember right.
If you want something crazy, there's a video from maybe 98, maybe 97, and there is a Dave that works for Outlaws was a tech guy and he was flagging.
Yeah, I just remember that year there was an Iron Man on one side and the Maverick was on the other.
Maverick. Yeah, see, I was back in the Mojave days, and
I was there too, but I wasn't pulling then. You got to remember, there's a little bit of an age gap between you and I.
Yeah, apparently you're young.
I am. Yeah. Jazz is way younger than all of us, but
Dan was actually at the state fair before you were, probably then. Before you pulled there. We got to see some sweet pictures of an Alice with a bump in the hood that was custom from 97.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that time, there in the late 90s and stuff that you were pulling like that state fair, were you guys still naturally aspirated then?
No, we were running. We would have had the chassis that would have been the Homesteader out of Powell, Wyoming. And we would have had a blown Chevy on it. We would have probably been running a 558 cubic inch blown Chevy with a 1471 on it.
I'll be darned. And just for everybody else, he brings that Homesteader up. That tractor we pulled against forever was a Ken Good out of Powell, Wyoming. Had an Allison on it. And I think I remember that from the middle 80s.
Yep.
Oh, really?
And we got the tractor. We actually bought it from Geiger's out of Allen, Nebraska. And we got the rolling chassis. We did a bunch of work to it. It didn't have a roll cage on it. The tractor had a Kenworth seat on it for a seat.
Yeah.
But it had the side shields that somebody took a lot of time to airbrush.
Oh, yeah.
And do things on. And we got them, and I threw them upstairs in my parents' house up in the attic because I'm like, someday this is going to mean something to somebody. And I got a Facebook message from Ken's son, and for his birthday, he asked if Brent messaged me, and he goes, "Do you by chance still have them side shields?" I said, "Well, there's one hanging above the bathroom in the shop, and the other one's upstairs in my parents' attic." I said, "You're more than welcome to have them both if you want." He said, "No, you purchased it." He goes, "But if you'll sell me one, I'd take it." I said, "Well, I'm not selling you anything. It's yours." So him and his wife actually came out to our shop and picked it up and got to see what we were doing now. And he just kind of shook his head, and he's like, from doing with what Dad did, he goes, this is a little different. I said, "Well, I'm on the low scale of stuff." So
That was, I'll tell you what though, that tractor, you know, I've got pictures of it, and I know you and I've talked about this. I've got pictures of that from the middle '80s. That tractor was, well, I'm not going to say ahead of its time, but it was as good as about anything in the country as far as chassis wise for 1980 stuff.
Well, Banner actually built it.
Yeah.
So, and them guys never knew how to work on an Allison aircraft engine. They had a Bud Wheeler. They had 2 engines.
I'll be darned.
And, you know, they're out in the middle of nowhere. Sorry, Dan. But so they weren't like they were in Indiana that they could drive to, you know, these guys that were working on the Allisons and get them worked on. So basically they had 2 engines, and they would run one season, and they'd take it out to Bud Wheeler, and the next year they'd go back and pick up their other engine.
I'll be darned.
So, and I don't know what Geiger's all got when they bought that thing. I think they got one good usable engine. I don't know if it ended up on the Boneyard or if it ended up on, you know, Dave's tractor or what. But I think there was one good usable engine that time that came on that tractor.
Yeah.
And the transmission out of that thing actually went to Farwell's and Terry Bregren's tractor.
So, okay, and he had a twin engine Dodge with 2 440s, if I recall there.
I don't know if they were 440s or if they were more or less common Chrysler engine.
I was gonna say, I can tell you one thing. It's a Dodge.
It was a Dodge. But it was called the Iron Worker, and
yeah,
you know, it was crank to crank, and you know, Terry and his wife, they had a great family. They pulled with us for a lot of years.
Yeah.
You know, once the class kind of took a little bit of a jump, they kind of realized that either needed to step up or, you know, they were going to have to change their setup to compete, because, I mean, when our class when they went to 6,000 pounds and with the turbines and stuff, and that turbine was unbeatable.
Yeah.
When it first started.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, they would have been pretty tough back in the day, for sure. Who was your first guy that come out with the turbine in that class?
It would have been Galen DeFries and Barons.
Okay.
That tractor that is now Jetlag yet, it came from Iowa. It was called the Sodbuster. It was a twin Chevrolet. And it still pulls to this day. I mean, I pulled it a couple of years ago down at
Cowtown,
Kansas City at the Cowtown, and I won the damn thing on it. And it had to have been the oldest piece of equipment that went down the track that night.
Well, did Galen and Barons, were they out before Patches with the?
It all happened at the same time, because like your that you bought from Patches, that came from Roth out there, correct?
Yep, Lee Roth. Yep.
And you know that had an L1 on it.
Yep.
And then they put an L11.
No, it still had unless they kept the L11 when they sold it. It still had an L1 when I got it.
Oh, it did?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm wrong then. Maybe they just put the alcohol injection on the L1.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's very possible.
But yeah. So I mean that tractor flipped over in Gibbon that year.
Yeah.
And then they remade the frame, because it used to just be a big square tube.
9-inch Ford rear end and maybe some kind of Alice Planetaries or something, and a single rectangle tube down the center of it or something.
Yep.
Really?
Because actually I remember that day that tractor came out and it flipped over, it tipped on its first run, and then Barron's came out with Juice 2 that I think that maybe that one had the L11 on it. And they were kind of worried about running it on that track. I mean, it was a Gibbon track, and it kind of bit, and then it didn't, and then it it did, and but that tractor ended up with Doug Cheney, and I think it's out in Ohio now.
And Greg muted himself.
Yep.
No,
Can you sign?
With one finger.
his AirPods are giving him issues today.
Now it's just pissing him off.
I just gave up.
His AirPods have not been working today. Got a comment here. Anyone know where Lee Brash's tractor from Bancroft called Custer's Revenge is? Or is it still around?
Boy, I don't know.
I would have no clue. I believe that tractor probably was a skidder tractor. Was that a skidder tractor?
No, I don't think so.
It wasn't?
They had 2 areas on it.
Dad's sitting off in the side. He said it had 2 Ariuses on it, but he doesn't know.
My wife called me. Sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
Hit airplane mode.
I'm not that smart. You told me that a couple times ago.
Yeah. at least
no,
you-
I wouldn't know that was, but I mean it's not that far away from us. It's only about 50 miles away.
And that was a mod tractor then?
Yeah, it was a mod tractor. He had pulled with kind of the local guys, and then he went NTPA.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a couple of those guys. Leg bands were one with the Alice in Wonderland,
Oh, okay. Yep.
and I think they might be coming back out.
Really?
Yep.
Is there any new mods being built for this next season?
Oh yeah, there is.
Is there?
I mean, we lost a few of them, mainly VA guys. They decided to do different stuff. But yeah, there's some new stuff being built. There's some stuff from out your area that's being built, and some stuff that was here that went all the way to the coast and it's coming back.
Oh,
So,
really?
He's still on mute. Look at him talk to himself.
Yeah. It's the best way to listen to him. Hopefully he can't hear.
you probably can. Why don't I put some pictures up that you sent me, and we can kind of go through them.
That was back in the old Massey days.
That is cool. Gregory?
I'd like to just move my lips and see if I could mess with you, but
Never mind. I got a comment and I'll just keep that one to myself.
I appreciate it, Dan. That I could hear you guys. That's an interesting story with that tractor went out, and I mean that foreign affairs tractor literally was on the farthest northwest point you could go short of going to Alaska.
Really?
And then come back to Allen, Nebraska.
Yep.
What is this?
That would be somewhere around 76 to 78 in between the Midwest Modifieds and the Nebraska Bush, where Dad and Grandpa and Uncle Kenny were they put turbos on a 427 and pulled NTPA.
Yeah.
And Dad told me he actually want to pull with that tractor. And it wasn't because he outpowered everybody. He said the track was so terrible that everybody overpowered it and couldn't get the sled to move. And that thing just did its deal and went down the track. I mean, the blow through carb situation probably wasn't very good in that day.
Yep.
So
Ron Stone asked 44 rear.
that would have actually either been a cock shot or a 4010 rear end.
Oh, really?
Bodie Ott Wild Cherry, Ray Anderson, and Chuck Schramm from C&H pulled in late 70s and 80s, blown Chevys.
Yep. We pulled with them. They pulled some NTPA stuff there in probably the early 80s. I remember them pretty well.
Ron's talking about the first picture.
Oh yeah, that was a that's a Massey. And actually, our cockshot rear end, after they went to a 4010, it ended up in the trees, and then Kevin Spichka and them guys came and picked it up, and it went in the Running Wild.
Really? How long did they run that?
It's still in there.
Really?
That's cock.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what this started? Your grandpa must have been a driving force in this deal.
Absolutely. I mean,
He must. You might. I mean, did he ever drive, or was he pretty much just?
he did. And then his brother, Bill, drove a bunch. And I mean, there's tons of stories of them guys could go on for hours. They were down at the county fair one night, and they took tractor. I don't know what it had for a motor. It was a small block Chevy or whatever, but it didn't run the way that they wanted to. So they drove the damn thing home and blew it up on the road on the way home.
My dad did.
But
things were a little Western back then. I'm pretty sure there could be quite a few.
well, but you could go to the junkyard and go get what you needed back then. You weren't calling Bryant Crankshaft and R&R Rods to put an order in.
We had a local puller from out here that would, and if I'm not mistaken, it was either a 428 or maybe a 427 Ford. I might be getting the guys mixed up, but they'd literally pull the motor out and put a pulling tractor through the, a few months in the summer, and they put it back in the Mustang or whatever Ford car and drive it the rest of the year. It's a different time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, the one 427 was actually that they had it. They never blew it up, and it was sitting on a pallet in the back room when we built a new shop, and it was out of I think like a 68 Corvette.
Oh geez, yeah.
It had the 3 deuces on it, and
Yeah.
they luckily saved enough parts to go to that 3 deuce setup.
Yeah.
I was actually able to sell that thing online, and I was able to use a few dollars out of selling that thing to buy my first Hemi.
When did you guys switch to the Hemi?
2004.
Oh man.
Yep, that's a Chrysler.
Is that what the tractor looked like when you guys switched to the Hemi?
Yep. Well, actually, we put it on the Homesteader chassis, and we bent it to hell. When we took the motor out, you could put a beer can under the torque side tire, and that was when it was time to put it in the trees. So we cut it apart and had Pobar make us a roll cage, and Jared and I and Dad and my Uncle Kenny made that chassis in the shop.
Okay.
And that is now the Patriot of Doug Roberts.
Yep. Did you guys keep the front wheels off that?
No, Doug Roberts has them. So, I mean, if you want to buy them for nostalgic value, you probably could call Doug up, and he might have.
Because those things were on the Homesteader too, correct?
They were. We left them on.
Okay. When did you guys build the new tractor here?
2015. And
that was a complete new build, correct?
Yep. Sold the tractor to Scott Whitworth. His plan was to put that tank motor on it.
Yeah.
And the planetaries that were on it were actually off of an FWD.
Okay.
which is kind of like a snowplow truck, or they made them into fire trucks and
Yeah.
all kinds of things. And when I sold them, I thought that everything was fine. And he took it apart, and one planetary was junk. So I felt bad, and I'm like, well, I'll buy you Franklin planetaries.
Yeah.
And he's like, I sell used equipment all the time. He's like, sometimes that's just what happens. And
Yeah.
I got a hold of Jim Martell, and I bought him a set of Franklins to replace
Yeah.
them. And that's when they redid the whole chassis and kind of put the roll cage more forward, because Scott's dad couldn't fit in it, and originally he was going to drive it.
Okay. That Junior?
Yep.
Ron Stone said that's a guy I know in Ohio that took the motor out of his wife's Mustang to replace the blown motor on their mini rod in the early 70s.
Oh, no, there was a guy out in Scotts Bluff that did it too. So
it was commonplace.
well, it's just a different time, because there ain't many motors you could pull out of some driving deal and go pull any place,
No, yeah. The good old days.
Oh, mercy, yes.
Marty Samuelson's checking in.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of crazy where that class has progressed a lot. You look, even the Homesteader chassis was pretty nice at the time when you guys got that together.
Well, it was flat steel. It was kind of an odd deal. Somebody just took flat steel and welded it. It was all arc welded together, but it had a big old knuckle in the back of that 905 Fuller, but it still had an SQHD with some pretty decent planetaries that were usable.
Yep.
At the time, and it didn't become unusable until we put that Hemi in front of it, and then we bent it.
Yeah.
So, and then we put the pipe chassis under it and used it for a couple of years, and then after Grandpa passed away in 2015, we decided to build a new tractor.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing too I'll take from this. You guys are really 3 generations deep in this deal.
Oh yeah. And it is a family affair. Jared is involved in it just as much as I am. I'm on the seat a lot more than what he is.
Yeah.
He more so likes to watch and help work on it. And,
Yeah.
but he's highly involved in it. And, my dad still comes along. You almost can't get the truck out of the driveway without him in it. So
I know. I talk to him a lot at the polls, and he's along whenever he can.
Ron wants to know, what changes are you making to your setup for 24?
Oh, we're putting a billet supercharger on it and changing cam stuff and fuel system and tires, and we're making some drastic changes. For this season, I don't know how much we'll be out just with the kids and ball games and everything that's going on. If it's running really good, I'm sure that Ken Urbon will have it out a bunch. It might just go on the trailer with the stud mule, or where it works, where they're at both when they have both classes.
Right.
And that thing, it made its way out to California with the stud mule here a year ago. So
One of those screw compressors that look like a supercharger. LOL.
well,
Is Ron offering, or what's the? Yeah.
I'm not sure what he's getting after, but
I'm sure you wouldn't mind a screw blower. But.
well, I was watching his thing last night, and I was talking with Doug Vopp down there in Texas, and they were talking about how cool the Allisons were and how awesome them things are. I'm like, well, give me another 1,000 cubes and I'll come up with something cool too. I mean,
Did you happen to see what's going on in Illinois with the Allison? That's going to be interesting to watch.
I did not.
Saw a picture on Facebook with an Allison with 2 superchargers on it.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the light class, but
No.
I thought maybe there was something brewing there that I hadn't heard of.
No,
But yeah,
I haven't heard anything there.
the one thing that I talked to Bodie about it that kind of seems a little concerning to me is when you get under a load, you know, like on them superchargers, your coil shaft inside of your supercharger drive, it takes a big load, like when you're under geared. And if they're running a drive shaft all the way underneath the injection on an Allison, that's a pretty long drive shaft. And I'm sure that Steve Bollinger has it figured out. But I mean, like if you got to bouncing and you lost some RPM, I think that would be, you know, because them superchargers, you know, some of them when they're completely rebuilt take 60 pounds to turn over. So whether it be on a belt or a fine spline, you know.
Yeah. Well, I hope those. I sure think that wherever they pull, they'd be better off to have Allisons in the class. I mean, that's one thing. Though not everything's perfect like in this class here. It's the variety is awesome.
There might be some more variety. Maybe Bodie will chime in, but I'm not gonna. That's not my place to tell. But Bodie might have some more variety coming, if that's possible.
News to me. Bodie can start typing if he wants, I guess.
Spoiler alert.
So he's got one comment that says 4 871s.
Well, that's what's going on. Steve Bollinger's deal there. I believe they're the superchargers off of Wayne Purser's Uncle Sam.
Oh.
Bodie's getting peer pressure now.
Well, here's one last picture you sent me.
That's a picture of Wes Sievers and Cody Meyer and I mean, just basically it's amazing pulling with these guys because it's literally like a family. You know, when I grew up around it, it was, you know, Chris Mice and Julie Nickel and the Berenses and stuff. I mean, we were all just about the same age, and you know, Berenses were a little older than me, but you know, it's different people, but it's the same thing. I mean, if anybody has a problem, we help each other out, and you know, that's the thing that makes it fun. And
there's also a bunch of characters in that deal, even from back in the day. You know, you can't. Hanging out with Cody can be interesting.
Oh yeah. I got a bunch of stories that you can't tell them, but you know they're
and Brian, I heard a heck of a funny story. You know, you're talking about Barons down in Cortland. I heard from one of my buddies in Lincoln that there might have been a long day of golfing, and one of the Barons boys might have fired up the turbine about 1 o'clock in the morning.
I don't know if I heard that story.
Well, this come from one of my buddies that lives in Lincoln. It was just ironic, you know. But there's such a bunch of characters in that class. If you hang out with Cody, you don't have a good time. I don't know if you get a pulse.
Well, and like when I was younger, you know, Kyle Petch was probably, I don't know how much older he is than me. He's at least 10 or 12 years older than me, but like he was the hired gun.
Oh.
If somebody else had a wedding or, you know, something going on, he was on the seat.
I've seen it. I'll tell you what, this could be interesting. I wish we could get a list of crap that he drove. I'll bet it would be something else.
And I thought when I was young, I'm like, that is the neatest damn thing that there is, that he gets to drive everybody else's tractor. And luckily, I kind of got fortunate enough to do that.
Yeah.
Bodie was in a wedding. I drove an Allison. I drove multiple turbines. Steve Nichols stuff. I've been on the seat of a ton of people's stuff, and
Limited Pro.
yeah, I was fortunate enough to do that.
Yeah.
Dan, I don't want to drive Dan's tractor. I'm too fat to do that because the front end would even be even higher then.
If it got wild, you'd be stuffed in the cage, Joe. You'd be all right.
Yep.
Petch back in the day, I remember him. I think that kid, I think he might have driven the old High Plains Raider more than Randy Herbert did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Man, he put a ton of passes on that track. I looked at there's like, I haven't quite got asked to drive a diesel super. I mean, that was a pretty good gig,
Yeah.
That was a pretty good one at the time.
Yeah.
Fred and Kyle, my dad and Fred, they were classmates down at Milford.
Yeah. Oh, really?
So they always grew up with Kyle and Fred being around. It was
Yeah.
so.
I'll be darned. Yeah, and Fred's been around it a long time too. He's had quite a list of tractors.
Yep. And I mean, you got to look. He had his hands in building a lot of stuff with old Arlo Pomeisel and that too.
Yes.
There's been go ahead.
What's that?
I was gonna say there's some comments. Russell asks, besides your hometown pull, where's your favorite place to pull?
I would say I like Rock Valley, Iowa. Just the hospitality of everybody in that town is amazing. They'll take their shirt off their back for you.
Yep.
And another one that's in Nebraska, I like Palmer. That guy, he kind of made something out of nothing. I mean, it was his backyard. The first time we pulled in there, we kind of wondered what we were getting into. All the FFA girls were out there taking money, and rolled the window down, and you got a tractor in there? No, we're the beer guy. And they're like, really? No, we got a tractor. And they're like, well, just go on ahead. They didn't ask for passes or anything, or just drive through the side of the cattle yard there and go on back by the pivot point. And there we were. So,
I remember the first time I told you guys about it. It was not the easiest sell. You were like, what are you talking about? Pulling some guy's place. But that one's been fun.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I would love to see that kind of grow into it's tough to grow into a Ravenna or something like that, when you're not tied to, like the Avanar. Which I guess Ravenna and the Avanar thing is kind of split now too, isn't it? It's not on the same weekend.
Yeah, it's a week apart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's been a fun deal. We'll see how, we'll keep pushing that as long as Clayton's willing to keep doing it too. That's been a fun darn pull.
Yes, it has.
I mean, I guess the thing that I kind of worry about the most, a couple of years ago, we were all worried about what we were going to do for sleds for the amount of events that we had.
Yep.
And now it seems like we have enough sleds, but man, if stuff keeps going the way that it is, if people can afford to keep doing it.
And that's a whole nother topic. It's amazing if you go back and look at what we were doing in the 90s, like just the actual cost of pulling then versus today. It'll shake you.
I mean, I was talking to the Cubbish, Kent and Cubbish. They got their tractor ready to go. You'll probably see them this year.
That'd be awesome.
The Commandeer out of Lee.
Yep.
They're ready to go and got a new set of tires on, and but we were talking about the price of rods and stuff. He's like, you Hemi guys got it easy because $1,100 set of rods, you can do that. I'm like, yeah, you used to be able to do that. That's no longer.
What does a set of rods cost for your Hemi?
Oh, I think these last ones, I mean, they were R&Rs because everybody else was out of production on them.
Yeah.
And it was just where you could get them. I want to say they were $1,600, $1,300 or $1,600. I mean, but they've substantially went up from what they were. I mean, you used to just order 2 or 3 sets at a time.
See, that's our tractor stuff. That'd buy 2 rods for you.
I know, but I throw mine away after
yeah.
a couple runs. So
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And the other thing about it is like crane cams, they're out of business.
Yeah.
A lot of these companies have they're just not out there anymore.
Well, and then you start talking billet blocks, and I mean, it's just a lot of stuff. And the horsepower has went up substantially.
Yep. But I'm excited. There's going to be some new tractors in the 7,400 pound class. There'll be some new tractors and like my class, and we'll definitely be out as much as we can. And I don't know, Kurt and the gang do a great job. I mean, can't do any better.
Well, and I didn't have a lot of information, still don't have a ton, but the new TV deal looks like it's going to be interesting. They're switching platforms on the Outlaw TV. Sounds like it's going to be available on a lot of the Roku and Fire Stick or different platforms that I don't know much about, to be honest with you. But it's kind of exciting to see where that may go.
Here's another question: who is your favorite polling hero from the past and then from the present?
Chris Mize.
That's I will add to that real quick. I don't know if I've seen anybody fire anybody up as much as Chris did there for a couple of years with an old John Deere.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
He might have had that most hated tag for at least a year.
Yeah, I mean, he's good at doing something. If you're going to do it right. I mean,
yep.
He bought the Mirror Deer from what was his? Forget what his name. Jeff Sapp. I mean, he bought a damn nice piece of equipment, and that was a hell of a running tractor. It was kind of fun there. He pulled Nebraska State. He'd run 4-1 in Nebraska Bush. We had an event down there at McCool Junction.
Okay.
He pulled Nebraska Bush 4-1, went back, pulled 4-1 off, put a Pro Stock turbo on, and he damn near made a lap with it. He took it left.
Oh, I think I remember, and that might have been the old Colorado sled too, wasn't it?
It was a Colorado sled. The old damn thing was jumping in the back. He ended up letting out of it. I don't know if he was watching the old Pyro or what, but
I'm pretty sure it was that unfair bore spacing advantage, Chris.
Big bore spacing. Yep.
Yeah.
They were all 640, but the big bore spacing.
Yeah, right. Well, so I mean, this is a little off topic, but did they take the old cockshut and put an 8.3 Cummins in it? Was that still the old remnants of the Supercock?
I believe the Supercock got sold.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Then they built the white, and I think that thing had a Hercules in it, if I remember right.
Oh, I thought it had an 8.3 Cummins.
It either had a Hercules or a Perkins in it. And then when they built the dig in it, they put the Cummins in it.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, see, I didn't realize. The middle one I didn't even know about.
It was called the dig in it. Chris would be able to chime in and say, but it was a white. I don't remember the tin work. It was a newer white tin work, and they didn't put the Cummins in it until it had the MX tin work on it.
The what tin work?
MX. The
Oh,
Magnum tin work.
oh man, I'm getting some gaps here. Apparently, I don't remember that. Because I thought they had
it was a dig.
Yeah, I remember
it was
that.
the
I
whole
thought it was
shop.
like a 6124 or something white or something like that.
They had the white tractor, and then it had like the MX 300 or whatever right there.
Okay. Oh man.
And then they went back to an IH motor.
Okay. Yeah, that's been a couple days, and I think that went out. And then is that when they bought the International? Was it a component chassis when they went to the Magnum?
Yep, they built a component chassis. I think Poe built that for them, and now they pretty much have one of the most beautiful super stocks out there, in my mind.
Yep, that is a nice piece. If you were going to step out in a different class, what would you do?
Well, for just being the easy button, it would be two-wheeler. Take my motor and throw it on one. But I'm with Jason Schultz. I'm a big diesel super stock fan, but I don't think I got the time or money to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be fun.
I usually try to make my way from the trailer up to the track to watch our guy from Kansas go down the track.
Yeah. Yeah. He's gonna be a busy guy next year.
Yeah, he's gonna have two of them. It'll be interesting to see that tractor pull outlaw.
Yes. No, that'll be nice. What one thing we should talk about, are you involved with the lead pull at all, or do you just help a little bit?
Help a little bit. Basically a little bit of influence maybe. I think next year we got the 540s coming again, which I've heard rumblings from Missouri that Mullinexes are going to be 540.
If you could get them and Tanner Michael up there, that'd be awesome.
And then that Mitchell from Des Moines, that's got the Bush Light tractor. That thing runs hard.
Uh-huh.
They put the show on last year in Lee.
Yep.
That was the most amazing class that we had.
For anybody that hasn't been to that pull, that honestly is one of my favorites. That pull's been a couple times I've went. I've never not had a good time there.
Yeah,
that's another community that puts a lot into that pull. I was blown away at the fairgrounds and the concession stands to hanging out on the football field afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Top notch.
Hold on, I'll flip the lights on here quick.
So
now you look better with them off.
But yeah, no, that pull's phenomenal. There could be a chance I show up at that one, Dan.
Really?
Well, it's the night before North Platte, which wouldn't be impossible to make it back from North Platte.
They got like cast supers there?
Yes.
Sounds like a game plan.
Yeah, that'd be fun if you're interested. That'd be a good time.
Yeah, I got room.
Yeah, we do have cast supers there, and last year I think it was about as hot as, it wasn't quite as hot as Wisner, but usually it's hot and it's in the bottom.
Yeah,
been a couple of years where it's actually been nice, but most years there's not much air moving, but usually draws a good crowd, and it's a really good time.
Yeah, it is.
The bleachers kind of sit over the track, and people get really close to it. I think it's a neat venue, but I'm also biased. It's my own hometown.
Well, I'll second it. the first year I went out there, and I can't remember what it might have been. I'm trying to think. I ended up with that turbine in 09, and I think I might have went out there maybe the next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, the pits are relatively flat, and I mean it's a damn good pull.
Yep.
Yeah.
We tried for years and years it was a Nebraska bush pull, and I was actually, Brad Brune and I were one of the first ones to bring on the PPL Western Series classes.
Yeah.
To try to grow the pull, and it really wasn't happening. And a couple of years ago, the president, who is now Kyle Delote, he was part of the fair board. I said, well, let's have an outlaw event, because I'm tired of calling people and begging them to come to our event. Outlaw has a good enough following that people will just show up, and I'm not going to have to sit there and call somebody all week and tell them, hey, we got a poll going on this weekend. So,
one thing else I'll throw out there, I did take my sled out several years ago to do a farm pull out there, and that was an eye-opening
10,000-pound tractors.
You warned me. There's some fairly healthy farm tractors in that neighborhood. I'll just in the semi. That was another one of my favorites. I don't remember the guy with the old blue semi with stuff hanging out of it. That thing ran pretty hard, but I don't think it drove away that night.
Yeah, I think it ran harder than your guys' semi that you pulled the sled out. Didn't that one have a little bit of a head gasket problem going out?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had stopped think about that, but yeah, that's pretty nice Peterbilt. But yeah, the farm tractors were a trip, man. I think we had 22 or 23 mile an hour with one of those 4455s, Dan. Guy kind of tucked his hat down and let it eat, man.
Well, and I mean, we used to do the farm pull the same weekend in the fair.
Yep.
We pulled the one year. I think we actually did Friday night bush, noon farm pull, and then 7:00 bush.
Yeah.
And Western Series, and after that, Brad was like, "No more. We're going to move the farm pull to August." It was just too much iron down in the bottom there, and and too much to ask for the people working the event, because usually, the third week of July it's 115, and you can't ask that out of people.
No, it's a lot. No, there was a lot of iron, that's for sure.
But no, looking forward to schedule, and we're going to hit as much as we can, and
you guys got a lot of hooks again. That's a good and bad thing.
Yeah, I know Cody might have some new stuff out, and we'll have some new iron hanging on, and it'll definitely be a little different. I know that we tried to make some strides to try to tighten the class up a little bit more, and
well, that'll be a constant. That's the one thing that, me coming from the tractor, like actual tractor side, is real simple. You get to this deal and you have so much give and take between the different combinations.
Yeah, he's got you have an IH, he has a John Deere, and you're both running 3x4 Chargers.
That's simple game. Yep, same fuels, but yeah, you throw in multiple fuels, multiple combinations. But again, it's a great class. It's one of my. I don't. This is going to sound terrible, but I don't know that, except for the just absolute horsepower of some of the 4-engine NTPA classes, I wouldn't hardly walk across the street to see it. But you give me this one with turbines and Allisons and different combinations. I absolutely love that. in that mod class. It's what makes the class great. But it also makes it hard.
Yeah, and I mean, and the one thing that I'd say is, I mean, the group of guys, I think it would be even tougher if we didn't like each other. To police it, because I mean, and that's the truth. At the end of the day, everybody likes each other and would take their shirt off their back for each other or help each other out. And it's tough to police something where you have a T53 L13 turbine, and then you got a 572 Hemi engine, and then you get a 1710 Allison, and then you got 1,000 cubic inch, Ford tank engine with turbos on it. And then, how is it that the 1,000 cubic inch turbo, the tank engine, can have turbos about the same as a 572 Chevrolet with EFI? There's just so many variables in the mix that if you didn't get along, it would probably make for a pretty damn rough day.
It could eat itself. Yeah, that's the one crazy thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's fun, and we'll see what this next year brings.
When's your guys' first hook?
I think that we're gonna try to make it to Arlington.
Yeah.
I guess it all depends. If we got camshaft ordered, and that when I ordered the camshaft, they said it was, I think it was either 8 or 14 weeks. But otherwise,
you just don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
It could be a hope for 14 weeks.
And granted, it would run without it, but if you got it tore apart, there's no reason to put it back together with something that,
Well, if you can make it better and it's on the way, you hate to put it together for a few runs and take it all apart again.
So, yeah, we're hoping for Arlington, and for this year, it's going to be less, but we're going to try to make as many of them as we can.
Yeah.
Just with the daughters' ball games and stuff going on. So.
Yeah, I understand.
And like I said, if it comes out running hard, then I'm sure Kent might be on the seat of it a few times.
Get the higher driver out there.
Oh yeah, he's good at it.
Okay. Well, shoot, man, Brian, I appreciate you coming on. I don't know, there's a heck of a lot we didn't cover.
Well, I know. I was actually going to bring up, Jim Puckett. He was an influence guy. You've had him on the show before, and he was another one that I grew up, that he kind of kept me interested in it. So,
one great announcer. That's a guy that most people don't know today, but that guy announced all over the country for NTPA.
Yep. You bet.
Another character.
If he's watching, hello.
Yep. All right. Well, Dan, you got anything else to add?
I don't, believe it or not.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and call tonight. Brian, thanks for coming on, and
you bet.
Appreciate it. We'll see you in a month or two.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
See you, Brian.